Salutations, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a brand new show coming to Zelda Universe. My name is Peyton Garrett, and I go by Emperor P on the internet, and welcome to the very first episode of Creators of Hyrule. Here at Creators of Hyrule, we are going to be exploring various Zelda topics, but with a slight twist. We're going to be bringing in guests and people from the community. And for a very spooky episode today, celebrating the 20th anniversary of Majora's Mask, we brought in someone that, up until a year ago, was also spookily missing in action. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Ooh, I'm Donnabellez, back from the dead, or as people said about me. Hey guys, what's up? My name's Donnabellez, I'm a YouTuber and Twitch streamer, and I've done a lot of Zelda content on my own channels, and it's definitely one of my favorite series of all time. Actually, the favorite series of all time. Yes.
Alrighty, so we're just going to get straight into the meat of it real quick. So why don't you tell us a little bit about how you were introduced to the Zelda series?
Okay, so the year was 1998, and my friend... No, it was 97, actually. And my friend just gotten her N64 for Christmas, and she got Ocarina of Time with it. And I was so jealous because we played together, and I was like, I have to have this. And I had to wait until March to get it for my actual birthday, but I was just like over there all the time because she was my next door neighbor. It's like, man, I gotta get this game. And that was my introduction into The Legend of Zelda. I hadn't played any before that, but I jumped right into the 3D realm of it, and I was hooked. So since then, it's just like I've been playing at least through one game every year.
Alright, well, since Ocarina of Time was your first Zelda game, it's only fitting that we start there and talk about some of the spooky bits of it.
Heck yeah, I love the spoops.
Now, the earliest thing we all remember in Ocarina of Time, at least I do at least, was getting the Sun Song and the slight ordeal you had to go through in the graveyard there.
Mm-hmm. Getting past the Redeads and all the Poes and everything. Yes, love it.
Mm-hmm. Something about the royal history of Hyrule's painted in blood and death and destruction really gave you a feeling of, oh no, what game am I actually playing? I thought I was playing the Zeldas where we go save the princess, not this game.
I know, right? Is this appropriate for a 10-year-old? Yeah, well, keep going.
Rated E10+.
Right. But yeah, honestly, I think the one thing that I learned from that game is that the Sheikah are creepy. Let me tell you what.
I mean, you don't have a, prison underneath your well?
I mean, in my well, I like to just throw in coins and then, little bluebirds come flowing out, you know? Sorry, my well isn't full of blood at the bottom.
Man, you gotta get a new well. I mean, especially with, creepy hands all over the place in it. You know, disembodied hands. I want to say that Link to the Past had a few disembodied hands, but I feel like Ocarina of Time is where they really found their stride with just putting disembodied hands wherever they could fit them.
Everywhere. And just skulls, you know, all the walls, just piles of human skulls everywhere.
Yeah.
Amongst a torture chamber with blood stains. It's great. It's very homey down there.
Yeah, makes you really feel like, man, feels comfortable. And then we all remember our first interaction with the dreadful and creepy Dead Hand.
The Dead Hand, I have to say, I actually don't remember my first interaction with him. I think I just kind of disassociated when I actually was playing for the first time. So going back as an adult, I'm just like, how did I do this? I don't understand. The gaping maw and the way he leans forward and just his little squibbly body with blood stains all over him. Just how? It doesn't compute.
I think the worst part is that Nintendo made it so that you had to be grabbed by one of the disembodied hands. Otherwise, you just couldn't proceed.
Right? So you have to, fight through that. It's okay, I guess I am the hero of time with the courage piece of the Triforce, so... Whew.
Maybe that was the whole point. It's yeah, I mean, he went through the forest temple and the water temple, but I don't know if that's courageous enough. Had to bulk up Link's resume.
Conquer your fears. You know, one thing that I feel like stands out to everybody every single time that they play the Ocarina of Time masterpiece game is redeads. Everyone remembers their first redead, right? Am I right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm right.
Yeah. Mine was Wind Waker. And in my opinion, Wind Waker has the worst of the redeads.
The scream, man! The scream is horrifying. But honestly, as an adult now, looking back, I think that redeads are some of the coolest enemies, I guess, in air quotes, in the Zelda series. Because you think of their wooden head, or like their coconut head, whatever. What are they? Are they zombies? Or are they ghosts? Like, what's happening?
They're almost like a puppet.
Almost, right? I know, I did a little research, and in Smash Melee, they're described as animated magic in humanoid form. And then, in Smash 4, they're described as clay monsters. So I'm like, are they made out of clay? Or, so they're magic? Like, what? Speaking of the clay thing, have you ever heard of Hanawa? They're like Japanese funeral ornaments that go on graves, and they look exactly like the mask of the redead.
Really?
Which is really cool.
I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah. So it's something that, protects the living from the dead. Also, these masks that look exactly like a redead's face, they're worn by ancient Japanese warriors to protect them. So that's maybe where they got the whole thing of the spooky mask, from the Happy Mask Salesman in Ocarina of Time.
Yeah.
So
it makes sense if you think about it, because every time you encounter a redead in that game, it's in like a tomb or a graveyard or something like that, almost like they're there protecting it, like guarding the bodies of the deceased almost.
Yeah, possibly. Or, they're the magic of the dead. I don't know. I'm not sure, but it's really cool to look into that lore and everything.
Yeah.
So, really neat, awesome design with a lot of Japanese lore behind it.
A lot of things in not just Zelda, but video games in general, they just take a lot from mythology and traditions and things like that. So it's really cool to see some of those in some of our favorite games and not even realize it.
Absolutely. Yeah, like I studied art history in college, so looking into those little details is like some of my favorite things to do in video games. Like, wow, what's this architecture? What does this symbol mean? What is this thing? So it's cool to look especially into the Zelda series.
Indeed. And I think we all remember when as well when you first become an adult in the game and you step out into Castle Town and it's just there's these redeads everywhere.
Littered with redeads.
Just the wind sound occasionally broken up by the sound of the enemy theme and the screams as you walk by.
And the like, nope. Nope, right out of there.
I mean, you didn't stop to admire the fountain?
Oh, yeah, the non-working fountain.
Yeah.
Full of probably Skulltulas in there and everything.
This
beautiful.
Is fine. Nothing ever goes wrong. Just hanging around a creepy ghost town.
Oh my gosh, you know what was even creepier than the well, honestly, was the Shadow Temple.
I mean, your temples aren't littered with just scythes and guillotines.
I mean, I don't personally have my own temple, but, it is pretty akin to my execution grounds.
Oh, yes. I hear everyone in Texas has one of those, right?
Yeah, exactly. Tying that into the Sheikah and everything, like, I just think that they have everything to do with everything creepy in the game. Especially, like, the Shadow Temple, Bongo Bongo even, the civil war that happened right before the beginning of Ocarina of Time. I just think that, like, the Shadow Temple, I don't know, is that more of an execution grounds, or is that more of, like, I think maybe the well is like a torture chamber, and then the Shadow Temple is where the royal family and the Sheikah sent people to die. Maybe deserters or something from the war.
I believe that makes sense, because the whole thing of the Shadow Temple is that Shadow Temple is that Bongo Bongo was supposed to be a prisoner there. Like, that was supposed to be his final resting place.
Yeah, I feel like that totally makes sense because, I mean, okay, so he's hanging, right? And his hands are detached from his arms. Like, maybe that's where he was shackled, and maybe he was tortured before. And now, that's his final resting place. And the drum that he plays when you come in, it's like the drum of an execution.
Mm-hmm.
Dun, 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 you're gonna die.
Indeed.
Major spoops.
Speaking of executions and botched execution, after Ocarina of Time, far later, in the great year of 2006, we got another game, Twilight Princess, a dark and gritty rendition into the Zelda series. Now,
yes,
it made an attempt. I think we can agree. Nintendo went for something.
There was an attempt.
They
get a star.
But I think one of the most jarring bits about it was just the Arbiter's Grounds in general. Because on the topic of mass tombs, like the Shadow Temple, that's what that entire place used to be. It was a worship site for the Gerudo that was just transformed into a prison and eventually just a mass graveyard.
Right. Honestly, at first glance, I think the Arbiter's Grounds is very cool. It's honestly one of the only, like, desert areas in a game that I actually enjoyed.
Mm-hmm.
But looking back at it, like, the whole concept of it is pretty creepy. Especially, who is it? The boss, the Death Sword.
And then, of course, there's just the final one that's Star-Lord, which is even a bigger monster somehow, just surrounded by these just dead Hylian soldiers.
I really like that fight. So, it was never really creepy to me. It was more like just like, wee, this is fun.
Exactly.
Use the spinner. Whoa!
It was one of those things where you can tell Nintendo was going for something, but they didn't quite hit the mark.
Right? I'm like, I know this is supposed to be horrifying, but wee! Let's jump from one spinner like to the other. Wow! Woo! I don't know. I always found the Death Sword a lot more creepy just because, like, his horns and the fact that he was bound, like his sword was bound on the ground with rope, and like the ofuda, or like the little wooden talismans that are hanging from it, it's like someone bound him in there. So, oof. Cool mini boss. Very cool.
He was definitely not supposed to be able to leave there, but you just had to get rid of him to get the best item in the game.
The spinner?
Mm-hmm.
Dee-nee-nee-nee.
So popular it became a weapon in the great game Hyrule Warriors.
That's amazing. I haven't played that yet.
It's a time. It's definitely a time.
It's an experience. Speaking of time.
Yes.
Twilight, the most sad time of day.
So eerie and depressing. You know, I don't know if it was just the time, but I first played Twilight Princess. Every time I just heard the word Twilight, all I could think of was the books. Like the Twilight books.
Oh, yeah. Equally as creepy.
Yeah, but every time there was like some big intense moment of Twilight, I was like, all I can see is sparkly vampires.
It's when they come out.
Mm-hmm.
And they sparkle just orange in the sunset. It's beautiful.
Yeah. I feel like they had something going. That's when I feel like their villain game was really taking a step up. Until they shoehorned just another excuse for Ganondorf to be in the game. But it's fine, because Zant was the boy we needed.
Zant was a creepy boy. He sure was. I'm still to this day not sure what was going on with him. He's very alien, right? Like alien in form and appearance, just like the Twilight.
Mm-hmm. He doesn't even look like one of the Twilight almost. Like,
I know, like the whole Twilight thing it's a cool concept. It's awesome. It makes you feel very isolated and alone when you're there because you can't communicate with anybody. But, like, the music and all the monsters and everything, they just look like they're from another world. They even, like, spawn from, the sky. Like, come down pixelated. It's very, like, futuristic and, like, what is happening? Speaking of nightmares, like, the dreamlike cutscene with Ilya and, like, the history of Hyrule and like the creation of the world and everything. Like, what is your take on that cutscene?
So, for me, I feel like that was referring to... That goes back to the Shadow Temple a little bit and talks about the Sheikah deserters. I've always pictured that the original interlopers used to be members of the Sheikah tribe. But that's my personal opinion. How about yourself?
Yeah, I can see that. I feel like the Sheikah are just... They tend to pop in like all the games, but I love them because they do have that just creepy air to them. But I feel, I don't know, that whole scene just gave me nightmares. Especially Ilya, with the knife and the red hand, or the red eyes, and, ugh.
Mm-hmm.
Also, like the interlopers, I feel that just like in Ocarina of Time, I feel like they're kind of fused in that story, like very similar to the interlopers in the Twilight Realm. And you can see them with like the lens of truth in going back to Ocarina of Time, the Shadow Temple. So I don't know, it's all very cool how everything ties together in these games.
Yeah, for sure. And you can definitely tell that some of it is probably just the fan speculation, because Nintendo always is like, yeah, we don't really have a plan, we just kind of do things.
Well, here's the thing about Zelda. It's so intricate, and you can, like, interpret the games however you want, but that's the cool thing about art. That's what you can do. Put your own spin on it. Like, understand it and connect with it in ways that you will appreciate. And that's the great thing about Zelda, and I love that.
Moving on to kind of one of the more artistic Zelda games. It's a little-known one.
Yeah, just, the one people tend to push aside when they're talking about Zelda.
I mean,
but it's my favorite.
When people think about creepy Zelda games, they always think about this one. We're going to talk about Triforce Heroes for 20 minutes. Here we go.
Yes! The most perfect game!
All right, so getting into the topic about Triforce Heroes, Majora's Mask. What a game.
Majora's Mask. Absolutely, I can say this without a doubt, my favorite game ever made. Ever. I'm obsessed. I love it.
Really? Favorite game of all time?
Of all time. And I'm guessing maybe with my connection to that and the fact that I say how I love spooky kind of aspects of the Zelda games and everything, I'm guessing maybe that's why you invited me, because I do have the appreciation for the spooky stuff in Zelda games, especially Majora's Mask. It's a work of art. I love it.
Just a little bit. That's pretty close to the reason. The main reason why you first came to mind is that I remember when I was thinking about creepy stuff in Zelda, first thing I thought of was Majora's Mask, obviously, and then the second thing I thought of was, of course, Ben Drowned.
Ben Drowned.
Which took my mind straight to you.
Absolutely. It's such a great creepypasta. I don't remember how many years that was that I made that little mini-series, but I did a series of each day that came out in the creepypasta and did voice acting with friends. I'm sorry, that's my dog. He's getting excited about Majora's Mask.
Ridley.
I'm sorry. You can edit this out. Riddles, come here. Do you want a treat? Let me calm him down for a second. Okay. Where were we? Oh, yeah.
Ben Drowned.
Ben Drowned.
Talking about the miniseries.
Yes. So I definitely have that on my channel of me reenacting that creepypasta. And it's definitely one of my favorite projects that I ever worked on. And it's definitely the most famous creepypasta that came out of the Zelda series. So I love it. It's amazing. Definitely go check it out.
And in other things Majora's Mask related, of course, you can't have that creepypasta without the Elegy of Emptiness. And, of course, Ikana Valley.
Ikana Valley. That place is an experience. There's so much that you can delve into there with just the architecture and, the upside-down realm and everything. But, you know what? Speaking of, the Death Sword and everything from Twilight Princess, that kind of got taken into Ikana Canyon with Gomez. You know, the bat. Gomez is French for Death Sword.
Really?
Yeah. So very cool. You kind of bring him back just with bats. Blah.
Looking at him, you can definitely see his Grim Reaper kind of death appeal to him. As derpy as he kind of looks.
Yeah, exactly. He is the most derpy. Like, so funny. Especially, the bats are an annoyance, but you know what? He's a great mini-boss. I approve.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of death. The whole game.
Yeah, we were kind of skirting around that for a second there. I was like, I wonder if we're actually going to talk about just the theme of the game.
The whole theme. Now, I know a lot of people have mentioned, like in game theories and everything, that possibly Link goes into it and he's facing his own death.
He's not.
Yeah, and I'm not sure I agree with that. I think that Link goes into it looking for his friend, Navi. So I think that he's kind of going through the stages of grief because he's lost a friend.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Whether they were really close friend or just someone that you were loosely related to, the loss of someone is always affecting.
Exactly. And I think it's awesome that Majora's Mask tied in that whole sequence of going through that feeling of loss. So with the different temples and the events that are going on at the same time, I mean, even the whole name of the land of Termina means like to end. And the moon with the sun versus moon, death versus life. I feel like that each area kind of represents the stages of grief. So the 5 stages of grief can be summarized with Dabda. So there's denial, which kind of, it totally describes how people are feeling in town, like downtown. Then there's anger in the swamp, bargaining by the Goron in Snowhead, denial by the Zora because they can't believe that it's happened, that their friend is dead or gone. Mm-hmm. And then finally there's acceptance, and that's at the end with everything. Like, obviously it's all death, it's all ghosts, it's all the Gibdos, it's all the graveyard and everything. Mm-hmm. It's amazing. Like, I love it. You can go into it and it's so artsy. I'm very impressed by the whole game, and the fact that they did it in 1 year?
Yeah.
That it was developed in?
One of my favorite characters, not only in Majora's Mask, but the entire Zelda series, is Iglos de Cara. And I think he's just such a fascinating character that you go through this entire temple to fight this undead king, and at the end, he's just accepting of his fate and just moves on peacefully.
Right. And they have to, or else they stay connected to Earth with unfinished business. And that's the whole point of the game, is healing. So Link heals everyone by becoming this hero, even if he's still dealing with his own grief and sadness by losing Navi. Possibly. I mean, I know that's a theory, but even if he can't fully get through his own sadness, maybe by healing the land of Termina, it's healed him as well. So speaking of healing, and I feel like the point of the game is to bring life and goodness back to Termina. One thing that never really gets settled, and that I think is one of the creepiest and saddest thing of the whole game, is the Deku Butler's son. You know how we see the little stump at the beginning of the game?
Yeah.
Well, at the end, I know everyone is shown, like, during the credits and everything, and they're all happy and celebrating. But what happens to the butler? Mm-hmm. He's there weeping before the shell of his son, who I believe his soul, his living soul, was torn from his body, so he's just crying in front of his empty corpse. And that's one thing that never gets settled in the game.
Yeah.
And it's... oh.
For a long time, people tried to find ways to get out to the Deku Sun with the Song of Healing, because they were just curious, you know, is it even a possibility that you could do something to save the, you know, lost soul? And fortunately, hackers found out that the answer is no, but...
oh, right. They just had to have that in there. Like, oof.
It was always just a thing of hope.
That's true. Like, can we please save him? This poor little Deku soul.
Mm-hmm.
But it's definitely different because I'm guessing that he was alive when Skull Kid came and took his soul and got his mask. Because the others were already dead. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're helping them after they've died so they can move on. But this guy, like, he was ripped away from the earth too soon. Crazy.
The big difference there is that with all the other transformation masks, you're given them. You do healing to get them. This one is forced upon you in a one of the most horrific
That's true.
cutscenes for, honestly, I think anyone to face, let alone, child, rated E 10+, of the first mask transformation.
Yep, it's pretty horrifying. And then just getting sent down into the rabbit hole, basically, in this, like, hallucination of all of these crazy, like, plants coming upon you, and then you wake up and it's real, and it's even worse than your nightmare. It's like, who am I? I'm made out of wood. What's happening? Woo! It's very Halloween-y and creepy, but I love the use of masks in the whole thing.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Those are some of the most standout cutscenes were the transformation masks when you put them on, because it almost seems like Link's in pain as he's doing it. He's doing it because he knows he needs to, but just his screams and the pain that is on his face as he puts them on.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So, with the masks, what do you think is the most terrifying mask to you?
For me, it is either the Zora mask or the Fierce Deity mask. And the reason I think the Fierce Deity mask is that when you put the Fierce Deity mask on, you can't take it off. It's a part of you now.
Ooh. See, I like that.
That's always just been so standout creepy. The Zora one may be the most creepy aesthetically when you put it on, but when you put the Fierce Deity mask on, it's almost like you're giving up a part of yourself.
Because you're transforming in basically to a different person or a different version of yourself almost. And that is creepy in that way.
Yeah.
I think, in my opinion, again, not aesthetically like the most horrifying looking or anything. It's actually very beautiful. But the All Night mask, to me, is the most horrifying.
Yeah.
It's a torture device. Have you ever had insomnia for days on end and not been able to sleep? It feels like you're going insane.
This is gonna date the video a bit, but quarantine! Woo!
Oh, woo! Oh, no. I didn't ever appreciate how horrifying that was when I was growing up and playing the game. But now that I'm older and I have experienced insomnia for, months on end, I'd get a little bit of sleep. But, like, that comes with so many things. It alters your mind. It alters the way that you think.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes people will see things, it causes hallucinations. It causes dementia. You can't remember anything if you're not sleeping. And just the fact that it's a torture device, uber creepy. The most creeps, but it's awesome.
Yeah. There's a lot of masks as well that just have this, not necessarily, it's not even like a transformation mask, it just has this subtle fear to it. Like, for example, the Mask of Truth. The way you first get that is that an innocent man just put it on and it just attached itself to him and then just cursed him into a spider-like image.
Ooh, yeah, the whole spiders, like from Ocarina of Time. I feel like that whole thing, in Ocarina of Time, the spider house, one of the creepiest things that I remember about the game from when I was younger. It's pretty terrifying. Honestly, not quite as terrifying in Majora's Mask because it's like you've gotten over the initial shock of seeing them. But yeah, you're right. The whole just aspect of the transformation of yourself with these masks it's pretty terrifying in itself.
Yeah. Moving on from that, you briefly mentioned architecture and atmosphere earlier, but there's also Clock Town and how it progresses throughout the entire game, or at least the 3-day cycle.
The music stands out to me the most, and just the way that it gets more speedy and more daunting as you go on. Like, especially the last few hours of the 3rd day when people are hiding and the soldiers are gripping their chests and looking up at the moon. It's sad, and it's terrifying and anxiety-inducing. Oof.
It goes back to that theme of acceptance that for the first day it starts slow and then gets faster, and by the third day it's this rapid song with this daunting undertone, but for the final hours it's almost peaceful and tranquil, the song, as all these people are just looking up at the slowly approaching fate.
That's true. I mean, they did have to accept their choice of staying there or not. So, whether they flee or stay and accept their fate, then I think that just seeing how scared they are about it, despite accepting their decision, that just gives you more fire to save them and to go through all the temples and everything and defeat Skull Kid.
It almost feels wrong sometimes to end a 3-day cycle, like the final 3-day cycle before you go beat Majora, without at least trying to do almost everything you can for everyone in one cycle.
I know.
I try to at least. Try to save as many people as possible.
I know. I've had friends do that in, like, their playthroughs, and I'm just like, wow, it's okay, because at the end, it's like it all culminates, you know, and everything is just washed clean.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all good. You know, speaking of music, I feel like some of the creepiest things in the Zelda series is a lot of the music and the soundtracks.
Oh yeah, for sure. The game has its fair share of just not only horrifying, but kind of depressing music that's kind of meant to send shivers down your spine.
Absolutely. Like, it evokes so many different moods. Like, I don't know what other people think of, like, the chanting and stuff in the Swamp Temple in Majora's Mask, or the chanting even in the Fire Temple in Ocarina of Time. To me, that's just so anxiety-inducing, and it's like, who is out there chanting? What's happening? Who are these people? It's just very, very creepy to me. Also, the chanting in the Forest Temple in Ocarina of Time is just like that. It's oof. Gets me every time. Chills. Ooh.
The Forest Temple in Ocarina of Time is one of those things. It's your first temple as an adult, and it really sets the precedent for your adventure thus far. This kind of decrepit, worn-down building in the middle of the woods, trying to save your best friend from your childhood while just... It seems almost hopeless, in a way.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a fortress. What was it used for, and why is it so overgrown now? What was happening here? Just ghosts and death and... oof. Oh, I love it. Good chills.
It also set a fun little precedent for the goal of the temple was to collect the 4 Poes and defeat them in order to keep going on to the rest of the temple.
Exactly, which I love. Ghosties.
It was definitely a difference, and a lot of people, myself included, we don't know what even Poes are. It's real interesting to see them almost have personality in a weird way.
They do, and it's funny because they're even named in Ocarina of Time.
Mm-hmm.
It's cute because they're named after the girls from Little Women, and it kind of makes them adorable after you've caught them, because it's scary the first time you encounter them and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But just so much death floating around all of the series. Speaking of loving creepy, anything creepy in all of the Zelda games, have you seen my reaction to Breath of the Wild 2?
That is definitely a thing that's happening. Breath of the Wild 2 seems to be following in the footsteps of Majora's Mask, at least in relation to its prior game.
I screamed so loud when I saw Ganon basically reanimating from the dead. Like, it's, oh.
The worst part of it was just the cracking sound as he turned his head to look towards the camera.
Oh, yeah.
And then just the vibrations of the eyes kind of back and forth.
Yep. Absolutely horrifying, and I cannot wait to see what happens in that game. Like, where is it in the timeline? Is this before? Is this after Breath of the Wild? What's happening?
Mm-hmm. Is there any particular, like, hopes you have for Breath of the Wild 2? Anything you're especially looking forward to or you want to see differently when it comes to kind of the storytelling?
The storytelling. I know that it was a bit jarring for me. Obviously for everyone, having it a big sandbox game, basically, especially when it comes to Zelda, because it's usually just so, especially in 3D games, so linear. So finding out the story piece by piece was a bit hard for me to put them together once I had, gotten all the little pieces, but it takes however much time between getting them and realizing the whole story. I kind of hope the story's a bit more linear, just, for sake of understanding it easier. But I don't know. I love the whole sandbox thing, but it's also nice having a bit of structure,
Mm-hmm. You want freedom, but you don't want, so much freedom that you don't really know what to do with yourself.
Right. It's maybe a happy medium there. I don't know. That's the thing.
Alright, well, we are running out of time, so Donnabellez, thank you so very much for coming and speaking today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm honored that you brought me in on the spoopy episode of talking about Zelda. I love it.
Absolutely no worries. So where can our lovely listeners find you?
Okay, so I have been on YouTube for about a decade now. So I've got a ton of videos there. It's Donnabellez, Donnabellez, and on Twitch. I do quite a bit of streaming right now, and my name there is Donna_Bells, Bellez. Definitely come check out my stuff. I hope to see you in a stream.
And I've been Emperor P. Thank you guys so much for coming to the first episode of Creators of Hyrule. We do have a comment question, so tell us down in the comments, what was your first experience of horror in the Zelda series? Your most horrifying, spooky moment of chills and thrills? And, without any further ado, I will see you guys next time. Bye-bye!